Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to another Lost in the Pond one, and it is 7 ways British and American restaurants are different, or very different. And I mean, off the bat, is that the right term? I don't know, but off like the top of my head, definitely portion sizes I think will be on this list, and tipping. But other than that, I don't really know what differences in restaurants there could be. When I come to think of it, maybe like waiters coming and like checking in on you more, and just stuff like that, which I hate personally. Sometimes I go to restaurants and it's like that, and I'm just like, let me enjoy my food. Obviously, I appreciate the fact that they just sort of trying to make it the best experience, but I don't want to talk whilst I've got like a mouthful of ribs, barbecue ribs in my mouth. Like, of course it's good. Look at my face. But yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. We're going to get into this video though. Hopefully you're going to enjoy. Let me know some more videos you want to see in future. Obviously links to his channel and all that jazz if you want to go show him some love, because obviously the reactions are to his videos, so you'd obviously enjoy his videos if you enjoy my reaction. But let's just jump into this. I'm sure
to some degree there'll be places in Britain that sell Chicago-style pizza, even though it's nothing like it. Or even in my birthplace of Cleethorpes, Chicago-style burgers, whatever that is. Hello.
To be fair, we got... Oh, fuck. This isn't going to bait out where I live. There's a few American food places in the UK. There's Zach's. Is it Zach's? Or is it Zach's? Norwich. No, it's Zach. I can't spell Zach. Flipping hell, man. There's like 3 different ones. And they're like sort of on the river. Or the one that I'm thinking of is on the river. Let me just spell it right. This is like an American style place. Like, it actually looks like quite, I don't know if it's just a sort of a fake version of it, but it looks like an American like bar, I guess you could say. But and it used to be where I lived as well, like near where I live. But I've never been there before. And there's a few other takeaway places, but let me know. Do you think this is definitely not the one? What is Zach's also an American thing? Oh no, this is Poor England. This is not in the US. I'm trying to find one of it inside, but I've never been in, so I can't really explain it. I know, but does this look American to you?
I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos.
I also wonder if when you go to those bars and those restaurants that are sort of American or like Chinese style, or wherever it's sort of based, do they sort of treat? Well, I guess they don't, because I've gone to like places before. I've gone to like Thai restaurants, and they don't sort of give you the sort of way how it works in Thailand or wherever the country is. It's just run the English way with their food. I was thinking, like, if you went to an American sort of diner, would they sort of be more tipping involved and all this kind of stuff? But yeah, that wouldn't really make sense, would it?
Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to restaurants. And because food is involved, restaurants have to be a kind of central hub for where British and American differences play out more broadly. Because we see differences in not just the food, but the terminology that's used, and some of the customs that are practiced, and the practices that are customed. And of course, the mere concept of a restaurant, I don't know why I'm doing that, the mere concept of a restaurant is universal. But the way that they are presented to and used by Brits and Americans is subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, different. And so here are 7 ways in which British and American restaurants are very different.
Here we go.
For Brits moving to or even visiting the United States of America, one of the biggest culture shocks, at least for me, was the kind of round-the-clock attention that servers pay to their customers. What's that? Your glass of water is empty? We can't be having that. American servers come right on over, minus the whistling sound, usually. And in between that and a bite of your broccoli, American waitstaff will be over just to simply ask, how's that food tasting? Can I get you anything else? Golly gee, that's a nice accent. Which part of Australia are you from?
Because I guess it happens more in the US, but how it happens in the UK, it's enough for me, so I can't even imagine.
Questions. Whereas British waitstaff are staff that, wait to come over until you're all done. And part of this is tied to the notion of tips and tipping. In Britain, contrary to popular belief, servers do make a bulk of their income from tips. But unlike in America, tipping is voluntary and not at all expected. A lot of Brits who come to the United States, myself included, don't know this at first. In my case, I even asked the waiter how much I should tip, so I gave her the 75% she recommended and moved on. Of course, with time, I came to learn that the expected amount here in the United States of America is 15 to 20% of your bill and or check. Will come onto terminology later. It's often been noted, especially within the fast food industry, that portion sizes in the United States of America are much larger than their European counterparts. But often, depending on where you go, this can also be true of sit-down restaurants. One of the first major American sit-down chain restaurants that I visited was a little place called Applebee's. And at the likes of Applebee's, but also the Olive Garden or TGI Friday or any number of other chains, your appetizer almost feels like a main course / entree. Again, terminologies later. And by the time that the actual main course arrives, you eat it merely out of politeness, while pretending that this is all fine. And then, this is the really funny bit, they ask you if you want to see the dessert menu. And of course you can't say no, because you're addicted to cheesecake. And that's always humongous and rich, as opposed to humongous and poor, which is what you are when you leave the restaurant. Except that cheap joke doesn't quite work, because American food on the whole is actually cheaper compared to the food served in Britain, which is partially how you account for the portion size difference. Now, after a while, I noticed that there were Americans all around me that, instead of ploughing through this mountain of calories in one sitting, answered yes to what was then an unfamiliar question to me. That's right, it's completely normal in the United States of America to have your food boxed at the end of...
I've started doing this, actually. I have started doing this. I never used to do it. You just sort of leave your food and be like, oh, well, I can't do anything. But now I sort of... I sort of had the idea, what if I ask and they say no? What's the issue? But yeah, wherever I've gone now and I've not finished my food, they do box it up for us, which is pretty cool, because half the time I'm not finishing the food that I've got there.
The meal with the intention of you taking it home.
I don't know how new that is, though.
It, or just eat it later that night if you're feeling lucky. And of course, now that makes sense, right? I mean, you've paid your money for that food. You want to get your money's worth. But on top of that, it cuts down on waste. But at first, just because of what I was used to back home, it seemed weird to be taking leftovers home from a restaurant. In Britain, as evidenced by this BBC article from a few years back, we've historically felt embarrassed even to ask for a box or a doggy bag, because we are, I don't know, I haven't a clue why, actually. Either way, I think leftovers are great, to the extent that I have Indian food for breakfast. Don't judge me. Buffets, aside from the fact that America seems to be just a tad more into them than Britain, there's an aspect of the buffet going experience that differs greatly.
But when I come to think of it, like, there's a few buffets. There's not actually that many. Like, we do have buffets here, but I can't really compare to how many there are in the US, because I don't know how many in comparison. But we do have quite a lot of buffets. I've got Chinese buffets. We've got a buffet in this where I'm from. It's got like every type of food there. It's got some English food, which obviously isn't the best, but it's still got to love it. You've got some like Chinese, some Indian, some just a mixture of everything. But I don't know, again, in comparison, how many we have
between the two countries. Where I was from, depending on the buffet in question, I love a buffet. I almost got the impression that it was rude to the kitchen staff to ask for a new plate when you're going up for seconds. In other words, whenever I went for, say, a Chinese buffet, I would go up, get my plate, scoop on all the food, go back to my table, realise that I am unrelentingly gluttonous, and then go back up for seconds using the same plate. It made me feel good that while devouring lots of solids, I'd done a solid to the kitchen staff. That could be taken so many ways. Whereas once I moved to the United States, I realised that this was considered either weird or unhygienic. At American buffets, customers are expected to get a new, cleaner plate when they go up for seconds, because this is a measure seen at preventing cross-contamination. But I
don't know if it's expected here, but I know now when I go to buffets, this might be different to when he was in the UK. Or they'll just have plates where the buffet, like, sort of, there's a little plate section with the forks and knives, and then you'll have the food and stuff. So you can just go and get another one. And what I usually do is just I'll leave my plate there. But maybe that's just how it's changed. Maybe the UK took from that and sort of learned, because it's like, yeah, why would we want to use the same plate when you've had a completely different food? Like, you've had curry and now you want to have some Chinese, and it's just like, this is not a nice mixture.
I have to say, after practicing both methods, neither has caused me any personal problems. But while we're on the subject of Chinese food, that brings us on to this. I think it's fair to say that in both Britain and America, ethnic food, or food that is usually associated with a country that is not this one, is extremely popular. And to varying degrees, no matter if you're talking about the United States or Britain, the same countries are often represented at the dinner table. Off the top of my head, the big one is Chinese food. Except you guessed it, British Chinese food and American Chinese food is vastly different. In Britain, Chinese food is often spicy, sometimes curry-based. In the US, on the other hand, Chinese food tends to be centered around standalone fried meat.
I've never ever got Chinese curry, but I know when I had Chinese the other week with my family, a lot of them got curry-based ones.
It's usually of the chicken variety. Now, these are not entirely absent from Britain, but one way that America differentiates itself is that its Chinese food tends to be a lot sweeter than in Britain. But whichever way you slice it, I planned that, both British and American Chinese cuisine is a modified version of what actual Chinese people eat in China. And this seems to be a common theme that actually unites Britain and America. Take, for example, Indian food. While it should be pointed out that Indian food is more widely eaten in Britain than in the United States.
We love an
and
Indian
that,
here,
in my experience, certain Indian curries tend to be spicier than their American counterparts. Neither is anywhere near as spicy as authentic Indian. On the other hand, in terms of everything I just said there, almost the exact opposite is true of Mexican food. America, by virtue of its neighbourly status with Mexico, eats way more Mexican food.
We don't have it here. We've got a few burrito places. I got one the other week and it just wasn't good, man. Like, and I know it's so much better than that. Like, I'll make Mexicanish food at home occasionally and it's just better than when you order it. Like, we don't have any good places, man. Oh, I'm so jealous that you've got all these places in the US because I love Mexican food so much. It's one day, just give us... What's the best Mexican place in the US? I'm going to say Chipotle. Is that even up there? I don't know. But just give us something, man. I'm on my knees.
Food than Britain does. Even if, by all accounts, tacos and the like have started to make waves in Britain. But even America's version of Mexican food is often a departure from what's eaten south of the border. Yeah. With authentic Mexican food often less spicy than Americans are used to. And it was in the restaurants of America that I got a first-hand feel for how America likes to modify the national dishes of other countries to create what amounts to their own version. Because they even do this with English cuisine. And that brings us on.
What?
To this.
How can you modify English cuisine? I'm interested for this. I've probably just shouted in your ears. I'm sorry about that. I got a bit excited, but
if you were to ask me to name 3 dishes from both countries, off the top of my head, I would say.
So for the US, hamburgers or cheeseburger, I can't really differentiate. Corn dogs, which isn't a dish, so I'm not going to say that. I can't even think. Steak and chips. No, that's actually the UK. Ribs, barbecue ribs. And, oh no, pizza. I'm probably missing one that's gone off the top of my head. They're the 3 American ones. So, pizza, barbecue ribs, hamburger / cheeseburger. In the UK, roast dinner. I don't know if this will count, but the all English breakfast. I can't think of the name for it. Just, like bacon and eggs and all that kind of stuff. Would that count as a dinner? And fish and chips. And actually, no, take away bacon, the breakfast one. I can't remember the name. I don't know how I'm struggling with that. So you got fish and chips, roast dinner, and what was I going to say? I've already said it, right? And I forgot it.
Say this. For Britain, fish and chips, Sunday roast, and a full English breakfast.
Oh, so it is that. Okay, there we go. I mean, I got it before.
For America, hamburgers, hot dogs, and pizza. And
okay, I was off by 1. I didn't really get hot dogs.
So I realised that all of those have disputed or undisputed origins in Germany and Italy.
Korma was what I was going to say.
They have become synonymous with the United States.
The UK.
But to a lesser degree, and because of American influence, hamburgers, hot dogs, and pizza can all be found in restaurants in the UK.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm sure to some degree there'll be places in Britain that sell Chicago-style pizza, even though it's nothing like it. Or even in my birthplace of Cleethorpes, Chicago-style burgers, whatever that is. But in reverse, whenever America tries to replicate popular British dishes, it's sort of like being in an alternate universe. It's great, but it's different. Very rarely do you get fish and chips where the chips / fries are thick cut and greasy, and the fish is singular and large. Instead, you usually get 3 or 4 smaller pieces of fish that are usually a tad saltier than what you'd expect back home. Oh, and did I mention... there's no mushy peas. Honestly,
I'm not going to lie. I've never had mushy peas. I don't know why, because everyone loves them here. I've never had them. I'm really missing out. I'm not even like the biggest trier of the British cuisine because I've not tried half the stuff.
South of England. And in terms of the other 2, the Sunday roast and the full English breakfast, well, I found those a lot harder to come by in the US than fish and chips. Even at those pubs that, every state has that purport to be authentically British. And lastly, we can't talk about British versus American restaurant differences without talking about the terminology. You see, it's one thing to get your food boxed at the end of a sit-down meal, but many of us might like to take it home without sitting down in the restaurant in the first place. In Britain, I always knew this as getting takeaway, which is why I was profoundly confused when I worked in an American office environment, and they talked about the key takeaways from the meeting. I thought I was getting curry and chips. In America, this is referred to as takeout or sometimes carry out. And regardless of portion size, we can't even agree on what to call each meal. In the US, for the most part, the meal immediately preceding the main meal is usually known as an appetizer. In Britain, I always refer to this as a starter, but some, as the French do, might call it an entree. This is where things get confusing, because Americans and Canadians alike use the word entree to mean the main meal. For us, the main meal is usually known as the main course. If it's a Sunday roast, that main course will include a Yorkshire pudding, and this is where things get doubly confusing, because we in Britain also use the word pudding as a catch-all term for dessert. In fairness, we do also interchangeably use the word dessert. In America, the word pudding is more specific, and the catch-all term has been deserted in favour of dessert. And the implements with which we eat this food, i.e. the knife, fork and spoon, is known collectively in the United States as silverware, whereas this word, when used in Britain, would pertain more to ornate metal plates, or perhaps metallic jugs, or sports trophies. A lot of the time, instead, we'll collectively refer to knives, forks and spoons as cutlery. And as we all know, it's very rude to leave a restaurant without paying. And this is why we ask for the bill, or at least we do in Britain. Because most of the time here in the US, Americans will ask for the check. And that's it for this episode. Let me know in the...
See, when I hear check, I sort of think like the checks that you put into the banks. But hey ho, I once ordered a burger and a salad at an Irish pub and was served coleslaw on a big meatball. I'm not sure what happened. To be fair, that sounds rank. How can they get a burger and then give you a meatball? Coleslaw. I hate coleslaw though. Oh, mate. I've heard several Brits talk about the size of appetizers in the US. Unless the menu says small plate, appetizers are meant to be shared among several people at a table, hence the portion size. Some people get appetizers as their main meal, but not in addition to an entree. Agreed that our overall portion sizes at restaurants is ridiculously large. I would love to see a comparison. I don't know though, but I mean, I've probably seen in previous videos, but it'd just be cool. Obviously, you can't fully judge it, but just to see the differences. And I wonder, like, are plates just naturally usually bigger in the US? Because obviously, to have more food, you gotta have a bigger plate. Is that the case? I don't know, but yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. If you want more of them, let me know in the comments. And until next time, like, subscribe.